Recently, the Oakland Unified School District decided to shut down and merge 24 schools. This caused a major uproar among the community, resulting in multiple sickouts and eventually a strike.
The meetings that the meetings that were supposed to happen during the strike were inappropriate. Myself, Shanti Gonzalez, we were not going to cross.
We have gathered multiple people from the community, and this is what they had to say.
I think that the upcoming school closures are really problematic for a number of reasons. I think that they are closely related to the way that schools are funded in the state of California. In California, you get funded per student in the classroom. And so what that does is it motivates schools to crowd students into the classrooms. And so that's why we have a high school recommended class size of 32 students, which is absurd because the recommendation is 17. And so these schools are being closed because people claim that they're under-enrolled, but that's simply not true. What that means is that they're not filled to absolute maximum capacity or overfilled past maximum capacity. All of these schools are in primarily Black and brown neighborhoods. They are in primarily low-income neighborhoods, and those are the schools where equitably students need the most one-to-one teacher touch. They need people to be checking in with them. They need people to be familiar with them, and if you're in a room with 31 other people, your teacher is not familiar with your needs or your problems, not because they're a bad teacher, but because they're splitting their attention 32 ways. And so the fact that these schools have students with the highest need and that they're being reported as under-enrolled, I think is a horrible misrepresentation of facts, and I think the whole thing smacks of racism. I think closing the schools it's the easy way out. To make an analogy, it's sort of like a marriage. You can end a marriage, and there are many, many good reasons to end a marriage, but you should try really hard to fix it first. I think that we need to change the way that we're measuring efficacy in schools. Right now, we're measuring it by how many people are in a room. We are measuring it by how well students are doing on tests. We're measuring it by quantitative data, which is certainly important. I don't want to, say that you shouldn't measure those numbers. But what we are not measuring is the qualitative impact and the community impact.
I'm not comfortable with the presentation, if you will, of how it's rolling out, that there's 24 schools that could potentially be targeted. I think that it needed to be more case by case as we close or consolidate 2 schools into one. Then we see where we are and what the result was. And then we go to the next and the next and the next. But to just have a report come out and say potentially 24 schools put people in a state of panic. And then it also pits people against each other from different places of the city. The haves, the have-nots, the wealthier versus the not so wealthy, people of color versus non-people of color. I mean, it's a big problem in Oakland. It's a big problem in our country. So I think it could have been done differently to where it wasn't so shocking. 24 is a big number, as opposed to we have, over 10 schools that are not the right size, and we'd like to figure out a way to bring families into schools that have more offerings. That's how it's been presented to us overall, that if we consolidate multiple schools, they might get to have 2 assistant principals at a bigger elementary school or 2 assistant principals at a bigger middle school, which means those 2 assistant principals help the principal run the school better. So there is less worry about fights or disruption or students not performing or teachers not performing and being trained. Ultimately, we need trained, great teachers, right? That's the first most important thing. But getting there is going to be painful. It seems as though it's going to keep moving along, and like it or not, my hope is that the right reasons are why it's happening. And I think the superintendent has the right intention and goals, but it's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy.